It has grown, certainly, but the threat has been contained. And I must tell you again to fasten your seatbelts because the launch of the force must be followed by large-scale operations. And so, in the coming days, you will be called upon again to intensify the fight.
This week in Bamako, Mali, leaders from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger gathered for a summit of the Confederation of Sahel States, known as the AES, a new alliance trying to reshape the future of one of Africa's most unstable regions. The meeting was meant to focus on security, cooperation, and development, but it was one speech that changed the tone of the entire summit. Burkina Faso's president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, stood before his counterparts and delivered a message that went far beyond policy. He did not talk first about budgets or plans. He spoke about danger, about a future he believes is already being prepared. He warned that a black winter was approaching West Africa, cold, bloody, and murderous. And as the room fell silent, he explained what he meant. In Traoré's words, war itself is moving toward West Africa. Does he mean someone is planning to attack Africa? Let's find out. The summit in Bamako was supposed to be routine. Leaders from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger had come together under the banner of the Confederation of Sahel States, the AES, to talk about cooperation, security, and the future of a region that has carried the weight of instability for too long. There were flags, formal greetings, and prepared statements. Nothing suggested that this meeting would produce a moment that might echo far beyond the room. Then Captain Ibrahim Traoré spoke. He did not begin with policy. He did not list achievements. He did not even name enemies. He started with a warning about time, about what he believes is coming next. He said a black winter is approaching, not the winter of seasons, but of violence. Cold, bloody, murderous. Words chosen carefully. Words meant to unsettle. At first it could have sounded symbolic. Leaders often speak in metaphors, but Traoré didn't leave it there. He leaned into the meaning. He made it clear this was not about imagination. It was about preparation, about seeing danger before it becomes visible, about recognizing patterns Africa has seen before, when storms arrive quietly and only later reveal their destruction. For people in the Sahel, this language hits close to home. They have lived through years where violence didn't arrive all at once. It crept in, first through rumors, then through small attacks, then through spreading fear. And before anyone could say when it truly began, entire regions were trapped in insecurity. Traoré was reminding his audience that wars don't start on the day the first bullet is fired. They start when conditions are set. The room reportedly went quiet, because he wasn't speaking like a man reacting to yesterday's news. He was speaking like someone looking ahead and not liking what he sees. Only after painting that picture did he say the words that gave the warning its full weight. War is moving to West Africa. Not might, not could. It is moving. As if it already has momentum. As if it's already on its way. That sentence changes everything. It turns a regional security problem into something bigger. It suggests that what is coming is not just more of the same, not just scattered attacks or isolated crises, but a deeper, wider conflict that could reshape the region if nothing is done. And Traoré made it clear he does not believe this is random. He framed it as something driven, something pushed. He spoke of forces working in the shadows, preparing the ground, waiting for the right moment. His tone was not emotional, it was controlled, serious, like someone delivering a diagnosis, not a speech. He did not yet explain who these forces are. He did not go into details. He let the weight of the warning settle first. Because once you accept that war is approaching, the next question becomes unavoidable. Who would want such a war, and why? So as Traoré paused, having put the idea of a black winter and an approaching war into the room, he left everyone facing the same question. Who does he believe is pushing this war toward West Africa? He believes it is being pushed from outside. After warning that war is moving toward West Africa, Captain Ibrahim Traoré did not leave the cause vague. He pointed directly to what he called imperialists, external powers that, in his view, have never accepted an Africa that decides its own path. According to him, this coming conflict is not an accident of history. It is the result of pressure, interference, and calculated destabilization aimed at breaking the Sahel before it can stand on its own. Traoré made it clear that modern wars do not always begin with armies crossing borders. They begin with influence, with manipulation, by creating conditions where societies weaken from within. Political tension rises, trust collapses, institutions are discredited, people turn on each other, and only when everything is fragile does open conflict become possible. That is what he was warning about. Before West Africa sees tanks or foreign boots, it will see confusion, protests, disinformation, and internal fights. In his view, these are not just local problems, they are tools. Tools used to make countries ungovernable and easier to control. For Traoré, this is not theory. It is drawn from Africa's recent history. He knows how foreign interventions have often been justified in the name of security, democracy, or stability, yet left nations weaker than before. He knows how partnerships that promise help can slowly turn into dependence. And he knows how, when African leaders start rejecting old arrangements, pressure suddenly increases. That is why he linked his warning to the timing. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have all taken steps to redefine their relationships with traditional powers. They have challenged old security frameworks. They have questioned economic dependency. And they have formed the AES to stand together rather than alone. In Traoré's view, this shift makes them targets. His message was blunt. When Africa stops playing its assigned role, the game changes. He did not list countries. He did not name flags. But the word imperialists carried its own meaning. It evoked a long memory of colonial borders, resource extraction, political manipulation, and leaders removed when they became inconvenient. Traoré was reminding his audience that while the language of power may change, its interests often do not. But he also made one thing clear. Outsiders cannot destabilize a region by themselves. They need cracks to exploit. They need internal divisions. They need voices that repeat their narratives. They need leaders willing to fight each other instead of confronting external pressure. And that is why Traoré's warning was not just directed outward. It was also aimed inward, at West Africa itself. Because if societies are united, pressure fails. But if societies are divided, even small pushes can cause collapse. Still, Traoré went further. He did not just say that destabilization is happening. He compared it to something the world has already seen, something that began with hope and ended in ruins. After pointing to imperial forces pushing instability, Captain Ibrahim Traoré drew a sharp comparison: the Arab Spring. On the surface, those uprisings were presented as people demanding freedom and reform, and in many cases those demands were real. But Traoré's warning was about what followed. In several countries, protests did not lead to stability. It led to a collapse, to civil war, to foreign intervention, to states that never truly recovered. Libya is the example everyone in the Sahel understands. Once a functioning state, it was torn apart in the name of change. After that, its weapons did not disappear. They flowed south, across the desert into Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and beyond. Fighters followed. Criminal networks followed. Entire regions were destabilized. The Sahel is still living with those consequences today. That is why Traoré mentioned the Arab Spring. Not to deny people's right to demand better leadership, but to warn that when external powers hijack internal movements, the result is often disaster. What begins as reform becomes a doorway to chaos. His message was simple. West Africa must not repeat that mistake. He warned that externally driven political disruption could plunge the region into the same kind of turmoil. Not overnight, step by step. First through unrest, then through a breakdown of authority, then through interventions justified as necessary. And before anyone can stop it, the region becomes trapped in an endless crisis. Traoré's fear is not imaginary. The Sahel already struggles with insurgency, fragile institutions, and economic pressure. In such conditions, even small shocks can explode into something much larger. That is why he believes the region is being prepared for conflict, not just attacked, but slowly shaped for collapse. But Traoré did not frame Africans as helpless victims of this process. He was clear that while external forces may push, internal behavior decides whether they succeed. And that is where his tone shifted. He turned his criticism toward Africans themselves. He spoke about African leaders who fight for personal power instead of regional unity, about media figures who amplify division instead of responsibility, about social media voices that turn frustration into hatred. According to him, every careless word, every tribal insult, every political smear weakens the region and makes it easier for outsiders to manipulate events. In other words, the battlefield is not only on the ground, it is in conversations, in narratives, in how Africans see each other. Traoré was warning that destabilization does not only come from foreign capitals, it grows when Africans lose trust in one another and start tearing their own societies apart. That is when external pressure becomes unstoppable. His message was tough, but direct. If West Africa collapses, it will not be only because of enemies outside, but also because of failures inside. And that brings the story to a critical point. If division is the danger, then the solution must be its opposite. Which leads to the next question. What does Traoré say is the only real answer to this growing threat? Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. He says the answer is unity. After warning about external pressure and internal division, Captain Ibrahim Traoré made his position clear. West Africa cannot survive what's coming if it remains fragmented. In his view, unity is not a slogan. It is a defense strategy. Without it, every country becomes an easy target. With it, even small states can resist much larger forces.
And continue on this path because great challenges await us. We have certainly been integrated into certain organizations that are, as General Chiani said, useless. We will see how to withdraw from these useless organizations and focus on what is essential.
That is why he pointed to the Confederation of Sahel States, the AES, as more than just an alliance. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, 3 countries facing similar threats, have chosen to bind their futures together. Traoré described this union as strong and irreversible. Not temporary, not symbolic. A decision made because standing alone has already proven too dangerous. He made it clear that the AES was born from necessity. Each of these states has faced insurgency, sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and isolation. Separately, they were vulnerable. Together, they can share intelligence, coordinate defense, protect borders, and present a united political front. Unity, in this sense, becomes a shield. But Traoré's idea of unity goes beyond governments signing agreements. He spoke about the unity of purpose among people. Because alliances on paper mean nothing if societies remain divided inside. That is why he criticized African leaders, journalists, and online influencers who deepen internal conflicts. In his view, every act of division weakens the collective defense the region is trying to build. His warning was blunt. You cannot fight external destabilization while destroying each other from within. Traoré framed unity as a choice. Not everyone will like it. Not every interest will benefit from it. But without it, he sees only one outcome: the region being picked apart, country by country, crisis by crisis. The message was clear. Either the Sahel learns to think as one, or it will be dealt with as man, each too weak to resist pressure on its own. That is why he kept returning to the idea that the AES is irreversible. He knows alliances in Africa have collapsed before, often under foreign pressure or internal rivalries. By declaring this one irreversible, he was sending a signal. This time, retreat is not an option. Yet Traoré also made it clear that unity is not the final goal. It is the starting point. Unity must lead to results. People in the Sahel are not just tired of war. They are tired of poverty, unemployment, broken services, and futures that feel closed. Traoré knows that if unity does not improve daily life, it will not survive. Words alone cannot defeat insurgency or feed families. So in his vision, unity is meant to unlock something bigger, a path where Sahel states stop reacting to crises and start shaping their destiny. Which brings us to the next step in his argument. If unity is the shield, then what is it supposed to protect, and what future is it meant to build? So the question now becomes, how does Traoré believe this unity can actually defeat insurgency and change the Sahel's future? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. He believes unity can turn survival into sovereignty. For Captain Ibrahim Traoré, The goal of the AES is not just to endure pressure, but to change the balance of power in the Sahel. He made it clear that unity must deliver two things: security and development. Without security, no economy can grow. Without development, no security can last. In his vision, the two rise together. On insurgency, his position is direct. The Sahel has hosted foreign troops and missions for years, yet violence has only spread. Villages burned, civilians died, trust disappeared. Traoré's message is that real stability will only come when Sahel states take full ownership of their defense, coordinating their forces, controlling their territory, and fighting on their own terms. Not as extensions of someone else's strategy, but as sovereign nations protecting their people. He believes the AES can do what isolated states could not: share intelligence, secure borders jointly, and deny armed groups the space to move freely across countries. In other words, unity closes the gaps that insurgents exploit. But Traoré went further. He tied security directly to economics. He knows war feeds on poverty. When young people see no future, armed groups become an option. When states cannot provide services, legitimacy collapses. That is why he spoke about development as a weapon against instability, not charity, not aid dependence, but building economies that stand on their own. In his message, the Sahel is not poor. It is underused, rich in land, minerals, and youth, yet trapped in systems where wealth leaves and little returns. Traoré promises that a united Sahel can begin to control its resources, trade among itself, and invest in its own people instead of exporting everything raw and buying it back at a high price. That is what he means by changing the future, shifting from extraction to production, from dependence to self-reliance. And then there is the global stage. Traoré said the AES will assert its place in the world. That is a powerful phrase. It means not waiting for recognition, not begging for partnerships, not accepting whatever terms are offered. It means negotiating as a bloc, choosing partners instead of being chosen, speaking with one voice instead of many weak ones. In a world where power is shifting, he sees a moment for the Sahel to stop being treated as a problem to manage and start being recognized as an actor with its own interests. But Traoré also understands something crucial. None of this will work if Africans themselves do not believe in it. Armies cannot win without public support. Economic plans cannot succeed if people feel excluded. Unity cannot last if citizens see it as just another elite project. That is why, beneath all his words about war and alliances, there was a deeper appeal. He was not just talking to presidents, he was talking to the people. Which brings us to the final question. What does Traoré's warning ultimately demand from Africans themselves? It demands awareness, unity, and responsibility. For Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the coming Black Winter is not just a threat from outside. It is a test for Africans themselves. His warning is meant to force a choice: continue with divisions, rivalries, and dependence, or consciously build solidarity and self-determination before events overtake the region. What he is really asking Africans to do is to stop being passive. Stop waiting for crises to explode before reacting. Stop consuming narratives written elsewhere. Stop seeing neighboring countries as competitors instead of partners. In his message, the future of the Sahel will not be decided only in foreign capitals. It will be decided by whether Africans choose to stand together when pressure comes. Traoré's appeal is rooted in memory. Africa has seen what happens when warnings are ignored, when leaders who speak of sovereignty are dismissed until it is too late, when instability is normalized and then suddenly becomes irreversible. His speech is an attempt to break that cycle, to say, this time, don't wait for collapse to believe the danger is real. He is also demanding discipline. Unity is not easy. It requires putting regional survival above personal ambition. It requires leaders who resist being used against each other. It requires media that informs rather than inflames. And it requires citizens who refuse to be pulled into hatred that weakens their own societies. In other words, Traoré is saying, if West Africa falls, it will not only be because of imperial forces. It will also be because Africans allowed themselves to be divided. At the same time, his message carries hope. He would not speak of unity, sovereignty, and a global role if he believed collapse was inevitable. The very fact that he calls the AES irreversible shows he believes the region still has time, still has agency, still has the power to change its trajectory. For him, the Black Winter is not destiny. It is a warning sign, a moment where action can still prevent the worst outcome. He is telling Africans that the Sahel can become either a battlefield shaped by others or a bloc that shapes itself. That choice, in his view, is being made right now, not after war starts, but before. And that is why his words in Bamako matter. They are not about one summit. They are not even about one alliance. They are about whether Africa finally learns to read the signs early and respond together. Traoré ended not with comfort, but with resolve. With the belief that insurgency can be defeated, economies rebuilt, and dignity restored, but only if Africans themselves commit to the path of unity and sovereignty. So after all the warnings, all the history, and all the promises, his message leaves West Africa with one final question. When the storm reaches our doors, will we face it as one people, or as broken nations standing alone? Let us know in the comments section. Has the war begun? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.